Hello, welcome to your Chelsea Bridge tour. My name is Dimitri Castiblanco, and I will be your tour guide today. Now, you should have just exited Sloane Square Station. You should be facing a large red sign that reads, "Pedestrians, look right." Feel free to look at the image on your device for reference. If you look to your left, you should see a large brick building. You will head along the right side of that building on the other side of the street, down Sloane Garden. Please pause the tour, cross the road with the pedestrian sign, and be careful with other pedestrians and cars. Unpause the tour once you reach your first intersection. Welcome back. You should now be at the intersection of Chelsea Bridge Road and Sloane Garden. Reference the image on your device as needed. Now, you will turn left and head down Chelsea Bridge Road on the left side. Be careful with crossing streets and use any available crosswalks. Now, please pause the tour and head down Chelsea Bridge Road. Unpause it once you reach a sign reading Battersea 9 Elms A 3216. Reference the linked map in the tour as needed. You are now on the cusp of reaching the first stop on our tour. Continue walking forward as if you were going to cross the bridge. Once you cross the crosswalk to the other side, look for a pedestrian crossing post on your right that would allow you to get to the other side of Chelsea Bridge Road. Stand behind this pole out of the way of other pedestrians. Reference the image on your device or the bridge map linked under the tour. Please pause the tour and unpause it once you get to this location. Welcome to the first stop along the tour. You should be at stop 1 on the linked bridge map. Chelsea Bridge should be right in front of you, and to your left you should see a large wall that says Chelsea Bridge. Reference the image on your device as needed. Standing before you is the Grand Chelsea Bridge, the first self-anchoring suspension bridge in Britain, but we'll get more into that later. Chelsea Bridge connects Chelsea on the north bank, where you're currently standing, with Battersea on the south bank, and its ownership is split between the city of Westminster, the London Borough of Wandsworth, and the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. What you're looking at is actually the second Chelsea Bridge to be built in the exact same spot. The first Chelsea Bridge was authorized by an Act of Parliament in 1846 after being proposed earlier in the 1840s, and it was built between 1851 and 1858. Its purpose was to link the densely populated north bank of the river to the relatively green and unpolluted land south of the river, and the newly designed Battersea Park. It was funded and built by the government under the control of the Metropolitan Improvement Commission, but due to a lack of funds, tolls were put in place to help recoup the cost of the bridge. The intention was to remove these tolls as soon as the cost was recovered. Although the suspension bridge was well received, the tolls made it extremely unpopular with residents. The first Chelsea Bridge was originally designed by Thomas Page, a British civil engineer who was responsible for the Westminster Bridge. He created several designs, including a 7-span stone bridge, a 5-span cast iron arch bridge, and a suspension bridge. The commission responsible for the bridge selected the suspension bridge, and work began in 1851. Without delving too much into the original design, it was typical for the time period with a wrought iron deck and 4 97-foot cast iron towers supporting the chains, which supported the deck's weight. The towers passed through the deck and caused the road to become more narrow around them. Feel free to look at your device for what the original bridge looked like. The original bridge was 703 feet long with a central span of 333 feet. The roadway was 32 feet wide. Its total cost was £90,000, or about £9.64 million in today's money. The tolls were collected at each edge of the bridge. During the excavations for the support towers of the bridge, large quantities of Roman and Celtic weapons and skeletons were found along the riverbed. This led historians to conclude that the area was where Julius Caesar crossed the River Thames during the 54 BC invasion of Britain. The most important item found was the Celtic Latin-style bronze and enamel Battersea shield, which you can still see today in the British Museum. The first Chelsea Bridge, or Victoria Bridge at its time, was opened on March 31st, 1858, by Queen Victoria herself, who was en route to open Battersea Park. After its opening, concerns were quickly raised about its safety. In 1861, John Hawkshaw and Edwin Clark, two notable English civil engineers, inspected the bridge, and eventually an additional support chain was added to each side. There were still concerns about its soundness, and a weight limit of 5 tons was imposed. Because of this, the name was changed from Victoria Bridge to Chelsea Bridge in 1880, as the government was concerned with having the Queen's name associated with a potential collapse. On July 4, 1857, almost a year before its opening, 6,000 residents from Chelsea protested the bridge's tolls. People brought up to Parliament that the poorer industrial workers who had no park would be unable to access Chelsea Bridge and eventually Battersea Park. After the bridge was opened, Parliament decided to make it free for pedestrians on Sundays. In 1875, it was also made toll-free on holidays. Another reason people did not frequent this bridge is that its main lights were only on during Queen Victoria's visits, making it difficult to traverse during the night. Now, let's head over to our next tour stop and hear more about these tolls and how we got the current bridge you see before you. Please pause the video and walk forward on the sidewalk of the bridge. Please stop once you see the 20 sign on the suspended steel cable. Once there, stand on the left side of the path facing the bridge. Consult the included bridge map for stop 2. Welcome back. I hope you have enjoyed your walk across the bridge. At this point, you should be at stop 2 on the bridge map. Please keep an eye out for other pedestrians. In 1873, a new bridge called Albert Bridge opened across the Thames, which should be the first bridge you can see past the Chelsea Bridge in the direction you are looking. Albert Bridge took many pedestrians from Chelsea Bridge and caused financial trouble. However, in 1877, the Metropolitan Toll Bridges Act was passed, which allowed the Metropolitan Board of Works to buy all bridges in London between Hammersmith and Waterloo and free them of tolls. The Chelsea Bridge was £75,000 or £7.07 million today. And on May 24, 1879, Chelsea Bridge, Albert Bridge, and the Battersea Bridge past the Albert Bridge were declared free of tolls. That was it for the Chelsea Bridge for a while. However, at the onset of the 20th century, Chelsea Bridge was in a rough state. Thanks to the rise of the automobile, between 1914 and 1929, car traffic rose from 6,500 vehicles per day to 12,600. The gilded finials, or ornamentation on top of the bridge, had to be removed due to their loosening and the fear of them falling off. In 1926, the Royal Commission on Cross-River Traffic recommended that Chelsea Bridge be rebuilt or replaced. In 1931, the London County Council proposed demolishing the bridge and replacing it with a 6-lane bridge, which would have cost £695,000 or £50.2 million today. However, due to the Great Depression, the Ministry of Transport refused to fund the project, and the LCC could not raise funds elsewhere. The Ministry of Transport, in an effort to boost employment in the Battersea area, underwrote the project for 60% of the original cost, and because of this, the bridge was decreased to a 4-lane bridge, which was only £365,000 or £26.4 million today. Quite a large difference. The Ministry of Transport also ensured that all the material used in the bridge building had to come from within the British Empire, which was still massive at this time. In 1934, a temporary footbridge was moved alongside Chelsea Bridge, and the demolition began. The new bridge, which you are currently standing on, was designed by LCC architects George Topham Forrest, a Scottish architect who eventually became the chief architect for the London County Council, and Edwin Paul Wheeler, a British architect. It was built by Holloway Brothers, a leading English construction company. The bridge is much broader than the original one at 64 feet wide and has a 40-foot roadway that supports 4 lanes of traffic and bike lanes. It also has 2 12-foot wide pavements that are cantilevered out from the sides of the bridge. The new bridge has a length of 698 feet and a height of 69 feet and 2 inches, with the longest span being 332 feet between the towers on either side. This bridge is a self-anchored suspension bridge and was the first one of its time in Britain. Now let's talk more about that and head to the next stop. Please pause the tour and head left over to the large connection where the red cable connects to the ground. This is the 3rd stop on our tour. Welcome back. You should be at stop 3 on the bridge map. Reference the image on your phone if you'd like to confirm your position. Please turn to your left and stand facing the rest of the bridge and the connection. As I just mentioned, this bridge is a self-anchored suspension bridge, which means that the large red suspension cables you see are not connected to the ground, but are connected to the bridge deck itself. These cables stiffen the girders, which are large steel beams that run along the bridge. However, more structural information will be shared at our last point. A self-anchored suspension bridge was chosen over a standard suspension bridge where the cables are anchored into the ground because the abutments, which are the large concrete supports deep within the ground to support the cables, would not have been stable as they would have been on soft and unstable London clay. Now, to help understand how this bridge was built and how it works structurally, let's head to our fourth and final stop. Please pause the tour and turn left and head straight forward. You should pass a stand that is selling food. You want to pass that stand and start turning left. A sign should be saying, "Lift access to Riverside Walk, Battersea Park." Continue that way and walk down the red stairs and turn right. Stand by the light post on your right and turn around. This will be stop 4 on the tour. Welcome to the fourth and final stop of our tour. You should be at point 4 on the linked bridge map. Feel free to look at the image on your device to confirm you are standing in the correct position. During this stop, please feel free to move around to see different parts of the bridge. Just be careful with other pedestrians nearby. Here, I would like to focus more on the bridge's construction and structure. Now, as this bridge was built upon the demolished original Chelsea Bridge, the original piers were used to construct the new piers. These piers are constructed of concrete and steel and are faced with granite above the low water point. Each side of the bridge has a single red suspension cable, which is made of 37 1 7/8 inch diameter steel cables that are all bundled together and form a hexagonal cable. The 4 towers of the bridge are made of steel set on rocker bearings. These towers are in riveted steel box construction and tapered towards the top, where they have exposed saddles to hold the large red suspension cables. Typically, suspension bridges have cross bracing between the towers to provide stability, but because of the short span of Chelsea Bridge, this was not necessary. The towers are hinged at their base by using heavily stiffened rocker bearings, which is not commonly seen on suspension bridges. This is because of the strange construction method used for this bridge, which we'll talk about later. Typically, these towers are cantilevered out of the base because they must support the cables. However, for the Chelsea Bridge, this is not necessary. Below the deck, feel free to move closer to the bridge, you can see the large main girders that run parallel to the bridge that have crossbeams perpendicular to them at regular intervals. While not meant to be constantly viewed, it is well maintained. Chelsea Bridge also has 70 suspender cables that are connected to the main suspension cables and support the bridge deck. According to the agreement made by the Ministry of Transport, all materials for the bridge came from within the British Empire. The steel came from Scotland and Yorkshire, the granite for the piers from Aberdeen and Cornwall, and the timbers forming the deck were from the British Columbia. The asphalt used for the roadway came from Trinidad. Since the self-anchored suspension bridge relies on the roadway to absorb the stretches from the large suspension cable, the suspension cables could only be built once the roadway was built. To solve this, Topham built the roadway in sections and supported them on very tall barges, which were floated into place at low tide, and once high tide came in, this would lift the sections above the height of the piers, and then the roadway would drop into place as the tide ebbed. Because of the recently built Battersea Power Station, the look of Chelsea Bridge was less critical and had significantly less ornamentation than the original Chelsea Bridge. The only embellishment on the bridge is the 2 ornamental lampposts at each entrance. Each one faces a gilded galleon on top of a coat of arms. You should have seen these towers on the first stop of the tour. Each outward side of the post has the LCC coat of arms of the Lion of England, St. George's Cross, and the very wavy lines representing the Thames. The inward faces of the south side, the side closest to you, show the dove of peace of the metropolitan borough of Battersea. The tower on the northwest corner, on the left side of the bridge across the river, features a winged bull, lion, boar's head, and stag of the metropolitan borough of Chelsea. The tower on the northeast corner, on the right side of the bridge across the river, has the portcullis and Tudor roses of the metropolitan borough of Westminster. These towers represent the 3 boroughs that share ownership of Chelsea Bridge. Please take a look at these after the tour is over. Now, let's talk some more about the way this structure transfers its load. This bridge carries 2 different types of load, a dead load and a live load. The dead load is the weight of the deck itself, and the live load are all the vehicles and pedestrians on it. The loads on the deck are supported by the 70 suspender cables that are connected to the main suspension cables. The 70 suspender rods and 2 main suspension cables are all in tension. Because of its design, the 2 main suspension cables are connected to the bridge deck, and the tension it's carrying is transferred into compression of the bridge deck on both sides of the bridge deck, as both sides of the bridge deck are being pushed towards the center because of the large red suspension cables. The towers carry all the loads of the deck and are also in compression. This compression is transferred into the 2 concrete and steel piers that are within the River Thames. In order to connect this bridge to the other sides of the road, there are 2 cantilevered decks that extend out of each side of the bridge. These are how the bridge connects to Chelsea and Battersea. Feel free to take a look at your device for a more detailed demonstration of how the loads are carried within a self-anchored suspension bridge. The new Chelsea Bridge was completed 5 months ahead of schedule, and it is under the £365,000 budget it was originally proposed with. It was opened on May 6, 1937 by the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, William Lloyd Mackenzie King, who happened to be in London for the coronation of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. This bridge hasn't been around without its fair bit of controversy either. During World War II, a temporary bridge was built alongside Chelsea Bridge as the government was afraid Chelsea Bridge would be bombed as it has very close proximity to the Chelsea Barracks. Thankfully, this was not the case, and the temporary bridge was dismantled in 1945. Starting in the 1950s, Chelsea Bridge became a favorite meeting place for motorcyclists, who would race across the bridge on Friday nights. On October 17, 1970, there was a serious confrontation between the Essex and Chelsea chapters of Hells Angels and rival motorcycle gangs, Road Rats, Nightingales, Windsor Angels, and Jokers. There were about 50 people in the fight, and of those 50, 20 people were sentenced to imprisonment. Also in the 1970s, this bridge was painted red and white, which prompted a number of complaints from Chelsea FC fans as they had painted Chelsea Bridge with their arch-rival Arsenal's colors. In 2007, it was repainted to a less controversial color scheme of red, blue, and white, which you can still see today. In 2008, the bridge was declared a Grade 2 listed structure, which meant that it would be protected and would not see any further alterations to its original look. Lastly, you might be wondering what this curved bridge you see in front of you is. It is the Battersea Footbridge, which was created to link the Battersea Power Station to Battersea Park. It was built in 2004 and was put in place by floating it down the River Thames. I encourage you to go see the beauty of Battersea Park after this tour, and I thank you very, very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the amazing story of Chelsea Bridge.